What's going on again, Algebra Bros? This is Mr. C here, and in this video we're going to talk a little bit more about conjugates. So as it says at the top, conjugates are used to help us rationalize denominators that are a sum or difference of two terms. And in the box here, it gives us a process as to how we'll utilize conjugates in order to do that. To rationalize a denominator that is a sum or difference of two terms, what we have to do is multiply the numerator and denominator by the conjugate of the denominator. Or as Arnold would say, the denominator get to the chopper. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and look at an example where we will use the conjugate of the denominator to rationalize this fraction, 8 over 3 minus the square root of 11. So the conjugate that we want to identify is the conjugate for 3 minus the square root of 11. As discussed in the last video, the way that we'll create the conjugate is to just change the middle operation. So the conjugate of 3 minus radical 11 would be 3 plus radical 11. So that's going to get multiplied to the denominator, but it should also, this is by one of the golden rules of fractions, be multiplied to the numerator. So that's how we'll start. All right, so carrying on, in the numerator, I would just like to keep the 8 in front of the conjugate, 3 plus radical 11. In the denominator, though, we are going to have to FOIL. All right, this is set up like a FOIL problem. So that's how we'll handle it. So for starters, we'll do 3 times 3, and that gives us 9. We'll then do 3 times positive radical 11, so that's plus 3 radical 11. Oops, 3 radical 11, that is. And then we'll distribute the negative radical 11 to the 3. I'll write that as minus 3 radical 11. And then negative radical 11 times positive radical 11 is going to give us negative radical 121. So it would look as though by multiplying the top and bottom by the conjugate, we actually get more radicals in the denominator. But that's not what it's going to end up looking like in the long run, because there's some simplification that happens in the denominator. All right, first let me write out the numerator, still as 8 in front of 3 plus radical 11. And in our denominator, we'll keep the 9, but you probably notice that we have some terms that cancel out, namely 3 radical 11 and negative 3 radical 11. And also, we have a perfect square inside the last square root. The square root of 121 is 11. So in the denominator, all those radicals vanish, and we're left with having to do 9 minus 11. So let's go ahead and carry that out. We'll keep the numerator as is, 8 times 3 plus radical 11. And in the denominator, 9 minus 11 is negative 2. There's one more thing left to do, and that's to simplify. This negative 2 divides 8 negative 4 times. So our final answer is going to be negative 4 times 3 plus radical 11. Of course, if you wanted to, you could distribute the negative 4 to each of those terms. But as you'll notice in the textbook or in my math lab, these answers are typically left in a factored form. So that's how we use conjugates to rationalize the denominator. We'll do a couple more of these, so I'll see you in the next videos.